everybody, and welcome to the next video on the parabola. In this video, we have a look at the intercepts. Now, the parabola has two types of intercepts. So it's got the X-intercepts and the Y-intercepts. So let's have a look at the X-intercepts. One of three cases can happen, and that depends on our parabola. So sometimes we get no X-intercept, okay? When do we get no X-intercept? If we have a positive parabola and the minimum value is bigger than 0, X is equal to 0. So as you can see, this graph over here at the top will never cut the X-axis. Or another case is if we have a downwards or negative parabola and the maximum is smaller than 0. So in these two cases, our parabola will not have an X-intercept. So the next case is when we have only one X-intercept, and that happens when the turning point is on the X-axis. So here on the diagram, we have little images of where the turning point is on the X-axis, and in that case, it will then only cut the X-axis once, and we will have one X-intercept. The last case is when we have two X-intercepts, and this occurs when it is not any of those two cases that we spoke about. So in a positive parabola, when the minimum value is smaller than 0, or a negative parabola when your maximum is bigger than 0. In those cases, then we would have two X-intercepts. So to find the X-intercept, we make y equals 0 and we solve the equation. What happens is the type of equation that we'll get is a quadratic equation. It is very important for you to know how to solve quadratic equations because that is the skill needed to then find the X-intercepts. If you are uncertain on how to solve quadratic equations, please have a look at our previous videos, as a big part of it will depend on your ability to solve it. One more thing to point out is that whether it has no root, one root, or two roots would be covered in the nature of the roots. So in the video of the nature of the roots, no X-intercept corresponds to when there are no real roots, no real solution. So when we get an answer in a quadratic equation and we have no real solution, that is when we have this. This here is when we have equal solutions. And this here is when we have real solutions to quadratic equations. So your algebra and your quadratic equations are very related to the parabola. This is the graphical representation of those equations. To get the y-intercept, we make x equal to 0, and we will always get one y-intercept. If we have a look over here, there's the y-intercept, there's the y-intercept, there's the y-intercept. Well, this one here, it goes too far, so it would have been further on. Here's the y-intercept, so that's both the x and the y-intercept, and here is the y-intercept. So we always get one y-intercept per graph. How do we get that? Is we make x equal to 0 and then we solve. So we have a few exercises where we're going to be finding the x and y intercept. If you would like, please pause the video, attempt it by yourself before going through the solution with us. So let's start with this one. We're going to find the x-intercept. To find the x-intercept, we make y equals 0. So we have 0 is equal to x squared plus 4x plus 3. And as you can see, this is a quadratic equation. We're going to have to factorize to solve it. So we're looking for the factors that give us 4. So it's x plus 3 times x plus 1. So that means that x plus 3 is equal to 0. So x is equal to negative 3. Or x plus 1 is equal to 0. So x is equal to negative 1. So this x-intercept is negative 3 and 0. This one is negative 1 and 0. Please, if you are unfamiliar on how to solve this, again, please watch the video on quadratic equations. Let us go to the y-intercept. To find the y-intercept, we make x equals 0. So here we have that it's y is equal to 0 squared plus 4 times 0 plus 3. So our y-intercept is 3. So this here is 0 and 3. What you might notice and might save you some time on that calculation is that this here is in standard form, and in standard form, the constant term is our y-intercept. Let's have a look at the next one. So let us start with the x-intercept. To find the x-intercept, we make y equals 0. So what we're going to be left with is 0 is equal to 2x plus 1 times x minus 4. So we can divide everything by 2. So we're going to get x plus 1 times x minus 4. And this is already a factorized version equal to 0. So we know that x plus 1 is equal to 0. So x is equal to negative 1. Or x minus 4 is equal to 0. So x is equal to 4. So our y-intercept is minus 1 and 0. And the next one is 4 and 0. Again, this step could have been simplified if you notice that this is in a root form. And in root form, we know that we change the sign and we get our intercept. So we could have got it from the form. For the y-intercept, we're going to make x equals 0. So we have y is equal to 2 times 0 plus 1 times 0 minus 4. So this is 2 times 1 times negative 4, which is negative 8. So here our y-intercept is 0 and negative 8. Let us have a look at the last one. So this one here, we're going to get the first the x-intercept. And how do we get the x-intercept? We make y equals 0. So we have 0 is equal to 3 times x plus 1 squared plus 1. So what I'm going to do is then multiply this. So actually, I'm going to solve using our steps for the square. So with the completed version of the square solving. So the first thing is I'm going to take the minus over, 1 over is going to become negative 1.